So for your hip assessment, we're gonna look at how well does your femur, your thigh, move independently of your pelvis and your spine. You're talking to me about doing hip mobility for fighting, so you have enough range of motion to be able to kick and stuff. And a thing that fighters often do is they use their pelvis to compensate for their hip. Okay. So I want you to think that if your leg doesn't have the range of motion to go up this high, you're gonna hike up here to compensate. And so when we're doing your assessment, basically what I'm gonna do is passively move your femur inside your pelvis, and then I'm gonna ask you to actively move it. We're gonna establish how much passive range of motion do you have, and then how much active range of motion do you have, and then the gap is what we're trying to fill depending on what we find out. After this, I'm gonna give you a couple exercises to match what our assessment findings are, and then from there, that will be your homework to do on like a twice-a-week basis probably. Go and lay on your back. Which hip is your bad hip?
They're both awful.
Okay, scoot down a little bit. So what I want you to do is completely relax. And what we're gonna do is start with just getting an idea of how much range of motion you have. I want you to keep your head back, and I want you to do the best you can to keep this side of your butt down. When I start pulling your leg out, you're gonna feel it rotating with you. I need you to keep your spine still and isolate the hip as best you can. I want you to see when I internally rotate you, feel your pelvis hike up. Do you see that right there? Do you feel this side coming together?
Yeah, kind of.
As I internally rotate you, right? Is it pinching?
No, it just feels more like pain.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to explain.
Put your head back for me. So this is your passive external rotation. This is your passive internal rotation. Okay, it's a little bit more technical than this. I could go on a whole tangent, the difference between neurological and mechanical tightness. For you, we're just looking at passive and active, and then what we're gonna open up. But I want you to see how as I get you here, the pelvis hikes up, and then as I pull you here, you feel this other side compensating. And so what does the body do? The body looks to the path of least resistance. Least resistance to have other joints helping you. I showed you your passive range here and here. What I want you to do is do it on your own now. So imagine that there's a steel rod right here. I'm gonna let go of your foot. I want you to very slowly externally rotate, and then very slowly internally rotate. And again, your passive is all the way about here. You feel this side stretching, and then your passive internally is over here.
Like that hurts.
Okay, and we'll work on that separately, but you see what internal rotation looks like, what external. Now show me your active. I'm gonna let go, and I want you to be very deliberate in swiveling this way. That's your active. Do you feel your inner thigh at all?
No.
Okay, go the other way.
There I do. Or like I feel like
you feel the outer hip, is it cramping?
Yeah.
Okay, go the other way again, slowly. Keep your head back. The reason I want your head back is the rest of your spine is gonna follow. I don't want the neck leading, so keep your head back for me. Now rotate the other way. Do you see where your passive is and your active is? Like that's how far you can go on your own, right here. Now relax. Now look how far I can take you. Do you feel that creaking too? Okay, that's your your passive internal rotation. So what we need to do is we need to stretch, passive stretch, but you need to be doing isometrics, and we're gonna talk about that separately. And then this is your external here. What we're gonna do next is hip flexion. Hip flexion is your leg coming up to your chest. You can do hip flexion with the knee bent, or you can do hip flexion with the leg straight. So all I want you to do is relax. This leg stays completely straight. I'm gonna bring you up very slowly until I feel compensation at the spine. Keep this down. So this is your passive hip flexion. You see how high you can go? In a perfect world, you'd be here. 90 degrees, where this is here, and the leg goes straight up to the roof. Do you see where you're deficient? Now tell me, if you can't get your leg this high without me helping you, how are you expected to kick? You can't. And so there's a saying is that you can't move where you can't move. You are trying to move into range of motion you simply can't do. And so you're compensating and you're getting a lot of weirdness, dysfunction. I want you to show me your active now. The same way I did with internal and external rotation, you're gonna keep the leg straight, and now you're gonna bring your leg up, but I need the quad completely locked out. So very slowly. Relax. You feel the quad contract there.
Yeah.
Do you see how little active hip flexion you have?
Yeah, it's awful.
Does this look like a hip that can kick, especially this high? No, right? This is your active. That's your passive. You see how the other leg wants to come into it. Now straighten the knee. Do you see how restricted we are there?
Yeah.
So again, just so you can get an idea of things, we did external rotation, passive. Now you go, other way, slow. Active. Active, relax. Passive. Do you kind of see the difference in how I can help you get here?
Yeah.
But on your own, you get stuck about there.
Yeah.
For internal rotation, show me again towards me. That's your active. You can do it on your own. Relax, go limp. That's your passive. When we do this, does it feel like it's really deep?
Yeah.
Like bone stretching?
Yeah.
Internal rotation's the deepest portion of your hip. It is the most important for the health of your hip. If you don't have internal rotation, every other part of your hip will be dysfunctional as a result of that. So one thing I'm gonna go over with you is training internal rotation so you can start opening that up. We did external, we did internal, we did flexion. We need to do hip extension now.
Okay.
So you're gonna flip over and lay on your stomach. That was your right leg we did? So hip extension's basically how well does your leg go behind you. If you can't get your leg behind you to squeeze your butt, you're gonna extend at the low back to compensate. So what I want you to do is go completely flat, off your elbows, head straight. Relax your leg for me. What do you feel here?
Nothing much. Yeah.
Front side or back side?
More front.
You feel like your hip flexor stretching?
Yeah.
Good. This is your passive hip extension. So if I go any higher here, you start contracting through this.
Yeah.
So this is about as far as you can go until the low back jumps into it. What I want you to do now is keep your foot in this position. Now lift your leg up. Do you feel your glute contract there?
Yeah.
Do you feel your low back at all?
Yeah.
Can you go, bring your foot down now. How high can you go without feeling the low back and just feeling the glute? You can see where if you go too far up, you start getting other stuff working.
Yeah.
Show me where your end point is to where your glute is right there. So that's as high as you can go for hip extension. That looks visually better than the other stuff. Would you say that feels better too?
Yeah.
It feels healthier. You feel like you own it a lot more, right?
Yeah.
And so you have a strength in hip extension. You're better here. But when I have you here, I have you here, and I have you up here, I like totally lost you, right? And I want you to notice, go ahead and lift up again one more time, but only as high as you can squeeze your butt. You see that's your active extension. Now relax. When I pull you up, there isn't that much more range. Do you notice that the gap between the passive and the active is a lot smaller, way smaller, versus here, you're there, and then I pulled you all the way there, and then for the other ones as well. So hip extension for you on the left leg isn't bad at all. It's the other three positions that are weak. Generally speaking, hip extension for people is worse, but that's not like, it's obviously dependent on the person. I want you to roll over again. We're gonna do the other leg. And then we're gonna talk about what drills you can do to open that up. Same concept, right? External rotation. This is the passive. Internal rotation. Do you feel your pelvis hiking up right here?
Yeah, it's right, and then I feel it right in there a lot.
And really deep?
Like really deep.
And you feel how this is dumping up and kind of closing together.
Yeah.
You're almost doing this to cheat for it. So think about it. If you don't have the internal rotation to kick, what's gonna happen? Your pelvis is gonna hike up, and that's what you're seeing here. So I'm trying to get you to understand, how does this assessment translate to your sport? It depends on the sport. For fighting, you need your leg to be able to go that high up.
You bring your knee up first.
Exactly, right? So you need hip flexion with the knee bent and the knee straight.
Yeah.
But like, would a baseball player need that?
Yeah.
No, not to the same degree, right? So that's where the assessment's only as important as to what you need. So again, this is your passive external. Show me your active. Very slowly, bring your foot that way, slow. That's as far as you can go. Now relax. That's your active. Look how far your passive goes. Do you see how much of a gap that is? It feels like a good stretch. It should feel like a healthy stretch. Relax again. Now actively go, one more time. That's your active. It's improved since the first rep. Passive. Do you see how big that gap is? But when we had you in hip extension on the other leg on the table, there wasn't a big gap.
Yeah.
Do you kind of see where I'm going with that? Same deal, internal rotation. Literally, dude, you have so little. As soon as I pull your ankle outside of your knee, right, like this alignment right here, for the people watching the video, we want to see his pelvis stay completely neutral right here. And as I internally rotate him, his pelvis is hiking up towards his spine and he's almost laterally bending. I want you to try to move actively on your own. So the steel rod is here, so all the way through. Now internally rotate slowly. You feel your hip contracting there? Is it crampy?
Yeah.
Crampy or cramping?
Cramping.
Cramping, breathe. Now go back to external rotation, go the other way, very slowly. Okay, now rotate back to me. Keep the steel rod there. Cramping or no?
A little less, but yeah.
Now keep this down. I'm gonna put my hand right here. Come back to me, do not push into my hand. Do you see how little you actually have?
Yeah.
There's not much at all there. Your leg's barely out, your ankle is barely outside your knee. So you can see both hips need internal rotation a lot.
Yeah.
They need external, but way more internal, right? Internal rotation is tight, that's really common. Okay. I told you earlier, internal rotation is the deepest. When we look at, you know the whole saying, if you don't use it, you lose it?
Yeah.
The first thing you lose generally is internal rotation. That's the first thing to go. Yeah. At your age, unacceptable. So we're gonna talk about that more. Same deal, hip flexion. With the legs straight, show me how high you can lift up, but keep your head back. Lock out your quad, keep your knee completely straight.
I feel like that's more like my hamstring being tight.
So do you feel your hamstring or do you feel your quad?
My hamstring.
Okay, now relax. So your hamstring is so restricted that you can't contract your quad to lift your leg up. You shouldn't feel this in your hamstring at all. You should feel this only in your quad.
I feel it in my upper calf and hamstring.
Yeah, so that's like textbook dysfunction. And so we're gonna work through that. We'll talk about it. With the legs straight, relax, keep the legs straight. You see how we have a little bit more there, but it's not a ton. But again, I want 90 degrees. That's the goal. So again, lift up on your own. Active, legs straight.
Okay, my quad's cramping there.
It's cramping.
Yeah.
So again, if you're cramping from just going into this range, how conditioned is that tissue?
Not.
It's dysfunctional as hell.
Yeah, yeah.
And like that's why you can't get up that high. The hamstring restricts you, the quad can't contract to pull your leg up, and then therefore you can't kick. Yeah. It's pretty obvious, 1 + 1 = 2. Lift up again. Instead of jumping out of the cramp, breathe through it and find your true end range. So knee is straight. That is your active right there. Relax. Straighten the knee. And that's your passive. Go back to your active again, straight knee. That leg is about here. Drop that leg. Go ahead and do the other one, slowly. Your right's better than your left.
Okay.
Are you right-footed?
Yeah.
Would you kick a ball with your right leg?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and so your left side's your worst one at hip flexion, okay? I saw that across the board, the left hip is worse.
Okay.
Is that your leg you plant when you kick, or do you do both?
Mostly, yeah.
You
my front
plant,
foot, so.
yeah, you plant with that, and then you kick with the dominant leg.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that this hip gets less attention.
Okay.
So when you're doing your internal training, this stuff to open it up.
When I kick with this leg, it hurts 10 times.
Oh, I bet it does. It's more dysfunctional.
Yeah.
But when you're doing your internal training, the stuff I'm giving you, this side should have more attention. So like hold the stretch a little bit longer, do the isometric a little bit longer, stuff like that. And we did internal rotation, we did external rotation, we did flexion. I need you to flip on your stomach again and do hip extension. So what I want you to do is keep the leg straight without extending at the spine. How high can you lift the leg up and use your glutes? Do you feel low back or butt there?
Maybe a little bit low back.
Okay, so reset. Don't go quite as high. More isn't better there. So that's the end of your glute right there. Do it again. Now relax. Do you feel low back there? Or do you feel more hip flexor, more low back?
Yeah.
So your hip extension here, do it again on your own. Straighten the knee. That's your active, that's all butt? That's butt right there? Okay, now relax. Is that low back or butt? Or hip flexor?
Mostly like right here and here.
Yeah, okay, good. So you notice in general, your hip extension's a lot better than your external, internal rotation and flexion, right, across the board. So that was the difference between passive and active range of motion, and basically comparing where do you fall short, where are you tight, but then not just where are you tight, where are you immobile. You notice hip extension, there wasn't a big gap.
Yeah.
You could find it. But the other stuff was super uncomfortable and there's a huge gap.
Yeah.
What I want to do is get you up. We're going to take a minute, but we're going to do some active hip cars, and then I'll give you a couple drills to work on.
All right.
Okay.